This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by Matt Bowen, whose work includes The Binge 2, and The Boys as well. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hi there. Thanks for having me so much.
Now, I guess I want to know, because when you start on like a big project like The Binge, how do you like figure out what the sound is going to be for the film in terms of your music or the music you're creating?
I love that question because that is the first step. And a lot of people first say like, oh, how do you think of all the music to write? And actually the first step is thinking about what world you're going to be living in musically. And then where does that come from? It's just exploration. It's talking to the director. It's writing sketches ahead of time and letting them sit with it. Sometimes those make it into edits, and an idea that they may not have thought would work. They see that, oh, it does work now that I see it against picture. It's hard to say because it really is, not to give kind of a cop out of an answer, but it really changes project to project. So
yeah,
just to kind of speak to the most recent one, which is the Binge sequel, called It's a Wonderful Binge. That one really came from a conversation rather than me tinkering. It was a conversation with the director.
Now, the Binge 2 title, the reason I didn't get the full one was like the one I saw was like really long. It was like the Binge 2, blah, 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 blah. It's a wonderful binge.
Yeah.
Did they change it? I'm assuming they changed it.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know what the working, if I were to hop on, I'm not sure what it says like on IMDb. I think it's basically like It's a Wonderful Binge is such a great title because there is some tongue-in-cheek references to It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think they wanted people to know that this was a sequel, and the Binge had, some modest level of success, but success nonetheless. And so you want people to know that, no, this is, over here, this is a sequel to that.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. Well, and I was gonna ask, so like you said, it could be different things that influence the sound that you're looking for. Has there been times where, because usually you might be brought on early to start thinking about it and developing it, but have there been times where once you start to hear the actual sound design of the film, it shifts it or it changes the way the film's going to sound musically?
I'm not sure that has ever happened. And I think that's because sound design is usually happening concurrently with the score. So they'll have temp sound design just as they might have temp music. But if sound design is going to be like a real high concept thing, I'm not sure that I'm not necessarily listening to that as I'm scoring. So I'm not sure sound design has ever informed the score's direction, other than if we know a film is going to be very sound driven outside of the music, then that just means the music palette needs to be pared down and have plenty of room, make longer gestures.
So how would you describe your creative process when you're trying to come up with the music for a piece?
Well, I guess a big part of that question is, where in the project are we? Are we at the starting gates? Or are we in the middle of the project? If you're in the middle of a project, if there's 1,000 creative decisions, let's just say arbitrarily, that need to be made. If you're in the middle of a project, 500 of those are already made for you because you've established, probably more than that, probably, you know, let's say 750. I don't know. I've never done these random numbers thing before. I'm not sure it's working out, but I guess I'm just saying, you know, if you're in the middle of a project, just like you brought up, you asked, how do you establish the sound? And that's such a hard, challenging part. It's a fun part, but it's a big part of it. And that's already been decided. So you've already got your sound. If you're halfway through, you've got some motives and you've got some themes. So sometimes as you get deeper and deeper into the project, it can actually, the challenge can be, how can I still be creative with all this established material? And at the outset, you know, when you say, you know, how do you start the process? It's just experimenting. It's almost like fooling yourself into, I don't know if this is for other composers or other artists, but I sometimes have to fool myself into like, I'm not starting, I'm just tinkering. So I'll actually make like a lot of voice memos, even though I have all this pristine, you know, recording gear. There's something about the non-finality of a voice memo. It's like, okay, I'm just exploring. And then inevitably sometimes there's a magic to the performance of a voice memo that I can't recreate. And I'll try to use the voice memo as an element in the track or something. But
so now, you know, whenever I talk to musicians, a lot of like they're always looking for a sound. So and that includes like the room you're in has a huge impact on your sound. So what do you look for in rooms when you're trying to find a particular sound for your recording?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I as you can see, I have all of my instruments are out, and that's a huge part of creating. You know, I used to kind of think that like, oh, that's just decorative. But as I got deeper and deeper into composing, and, you know, I was in very modest setups, so all my instruments would be in a closet. And then I started realizing that, okay, if they're not immediately available at my fingertips, I'm just not going to use them, because the actual creative spark is so fast. And to think of, you know, where the instrument is and what case and get it out. So for me, having everything at my fingertips is a big part of creating, because the paintbrushes that you use are so important. You know, I could play the exact same chord progression on 10 different instruments back here, and you'd be like, oh, okay, those all kind of took me on slightly different journeys.
Well, and it's so interesting because you talk about the spark being so being so quick and having to get it down. Like I think about from a writing perspective, if I don't have a notebook nearby, it's almost like you forget that spark. Like an hour later, you're like, oh, what was that thing going by? So it's like, I guess like you hear the sound and then it's like, okay, I got to grab a guitar and just start working this out.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. No, it's especially when you're coming up with more like bigger picture thematic content. Now, if I'm writing a cue, you know, if I'm just sitting down to write a cue, you know, the next cue on this TV show I'm working on, I'm, like I said, you know, a lot of the creative decisions out of the gates are made for me, though I shouldn't say made for me. I've made those myself, but, you know, a couple months ago. So that's not the process on every single piece of music I write, but that is the process. If I'm like, okay, where are we taking this project?
Mm-hmm. Now you might record like tons and tons of pieces and show them to the director. No, that's not it. Try this. Mm-hmm. And so you might have like 400 minutes for, you know, a 22-minute show or something. So
oh, hopefully not that, but yeah.
Yeah. But do you ever want to like release it as like, you know, just toss it out there for people or put it on Apple Music or something? Or do you sort of like, no, that was me working it out and like I like to hide it?
I think it's mostly the latter. I don't know about hiding it, but I'm not against sharing it, but you know, a lot of times sketches just they're not completely fully formed. And so you check in at a point where it's like, hey, is this worth making it fully formed. Maybe it's maybe you're using a fake orchestra, and you'd say like we would use live orchestra, but we need to decide whether this is working or not. And so when they say it's not working, I don't take the time to get live players on it. So it stays in sketch form, as we say, or in demo form. And then sometimes there's an idea that I really like, and it just maybe it's just not right for that particular project. So, but if I was really proud of it or really happy with it, I'll keep it in this kind of, I've got a folder of dead demos that I will go to if I'm looking for inspiration.
Now I have to ask this. Editors are going to stick in some other piece of music that they can find to get the beat and the structure down. Absolutely. How do you deal with temp love and trying to get the director on to something new?
That's a great question, and it's temp is absolutely a gigantic blessing and at times a gigantic curse for a composer. I mean, the positives far outweigh the negatives in that it just allows us to have a musical conversation way faster, to point out that this and this are working about that, this and this are not working about that. Great. And maybe somebody who's not super comfortable talking in the music world can just say, I like that flourish, or I like that event right there. And you can, and I know how to, translate that into like, okay, I know what they like about it, and I can incorporate that. Temp love happens, and it can be a less than inspiring process of trying to come up with something that is still your own, but gives them what they want that was in the temp. So I don't, it just happens. I don't bemoan it because of all the positives that come with temp. But
so now when you're
trial and error.
When you're working on a show, because you're talking about working on a show right now, how do you evolve how does the music evolve from season to season? Like, are you still involved creating new music, or do they just use the work from the previous season? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends on the show. If it's a scripted drama, that you're always writing fresh music, tailored to each scene. So there's no reuse. If you're working more in like a reality world, there's a ton of reuse there, and rightfully so. There's just so much. There's not a need for everything to be scored, and there's the demand on music is unrealistic for it to be scored. But like for boys, we've been through 3 seasons, and each, the nuances are so important on that show that we just can't quite reuse. You just can't, there's the subtleties and just responding to the phenomenal performances in that show. So yeah, we're always writing those from the ground up. Now that said, the immense luxury of having been through 3 seasons is they will temp with our own score, and that's nice because you if there's an idea or a motive or a theme that's working, we can use that. That's ours. So that's an immense luxury. Once you get out, if you're lucky enough to go to a season 2, then the show will usually they'll just temp with your own score, and that makes that conversation even faster. Yeah.
Well, and I feel with something like The Boys, like the change in the characters and how much happens to them, like you would have like originally, I can't remember the main guys,
Homelander and Butcher.
Homelander. He's presented as like Superman in the first episode as we start to meet him, and like slowly over the episode we see that he's not, and then over the seasons you're like, oh, he's really bad. So like he goes from being a superhero to the worst villain possible. So there's like a shift in that
totally
has to occur.
and that was a big challenge for us. And when I say us, this is I was working as a team member. This is Chris Lennertz is the composer on the show, and I was working on as a team member for the first 2 seasons, and then come season 3, kind of up to the level of collaborating, and was credited on 2 of those episodes in season 3. But back to season 2, that was a big challenge that you pointed out. Is season 1, we kind of kept to have we kind of were always able to have a little bit of tongue-in-cheek, because it was is this Superman, is it not?
Yeah.
And I guess it's been out long enough, there's no spoilers there, he's not a good guy. And so season 2, the secret was out, and season 2 was very dark. And we were writing very different music than in season 1. And that was a challenge, because it was kind of how we got to keep the identity of the show, but we're responding to very different scenes now.
It's interesting. So you talked about it being dark. So when you're talking to, the directors or the producers or the showrunners, I talk to editors a lot, and they'll be like, oh, I want you to talk to me in emotions. This scene needs to be feeling like this so that they can work. It's the same thing for you. Is that how you the communication? I need more, anger or sadness, or it needs to go darker.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're not comfortable talking in terms of music, which most people aren't, which it's just better just to it's just talk emotion, because that's what it's all about anyway. I mean, there's no need to get geeky with harmonic language or whatever. It's just well, what's the emotion? What is something that Eric Kripke, who's the showrunner on The Boys, that I think he does particularly well, is he'll let us know whose eyes are we seeing the scene through.
Yeah.
Which that show can be so subtle, and so sometimes when we're at the spotting session, which is what we're talking about, what music goes where, he'll let us know. He's by the way, this is we're watching the scene through that person's eyes. And it's okay, and that of course informs the music that needs to be written for that scene.
So I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Guilty pleasure. Might sound. I'm just thinking of what we're watching. Right? I say my wife and I get through a work day and get the kids to bed. I don't know. We don't want to think too hard. So right now we're watching reruns of The Good Place. Gotta say it really holds up, but we're not exactly on the cutting edge of what's out right now.
Are you still surprised? Because part of the selling of that is oh my gosh, what are they going to do?
Totally. It's funny. I think when the show came, I mean, we knew the rug pull from season 1 to season 2. But there has been a lot of, we're in season 2, and there have been a lot of surprises. And I think we were thinking, when the show came out, I think we had really young kids, and I love my kids, but they can really put a dent in your short-term memory.
Yeah.
And so there's more surprises than I'd like to admit for a show that we're rewatching.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview this week.
Oh, thanks for bringing me on. Anytime.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmakers_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.